Smarty Pants.
Well, that's going to be in the episode now. We're live, dude.
Oops. I never got we're live.
You had your head down.
Oh,
well,
sorry.
this is going to be for the video, not for the podcast.
Hey, our listeners know that know our deal, so
well, and I mean, this is the value of you need to check both. This is like right. the wide angle view. Right. All right, let's start for real this time.
Okay.
Here we go. Business Not As Usual podcasts coming at ya. We're back. We're back with Vince and Mike, and this is the closing episode, or we expect it to be the closing episode of our series within a series on the missing pieces of the digital transformation. Thus far, we've spoken about driving decisions down deep into the organization. We've spoken about people, both from an internal staff and external customer perspective. We spoke in some detail about business process and how that can be leveraged for transformation. Today, we're going to bring it all together, Mike. We're going to bring it all together under the umbrella of organizational culture.
Yeah, and remember, we also talked about customer and how we focus on the customer and how it weaved throughout. Did you?
I said that, yeah.
Okay, I don't think you did.
It's fine.
That's
I did.
Okay,
I did. Let's roll the tape back. It'll clearly show
okay, fine.
that I did. But
maybe
this is
you
all
did.
Good stuff. I did. So I said we looked at the customer external and the staff internal, and it's fine. It's fine. This is all good stuff. But today we're going to look at the organizational behavior, organizational structure, and organizational culture, and how the culture of the organization really dictates those other elements, and vice versa, how those elements can dictate culture.
Mm-hmm.
So please have at it.
I think before we get into it, Vince, because I know you really want to talk about culture, and it's something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in everything that we've talked about, I hope everyone sees that when we talk about transformation, and and also the term of digital transformation, that it has nothing to do with technology. And it has everything to do with a change in mindset, and it's a change in your business model, and most importantly, even though they're all important, also a change in your culture, because a change in your culture brings all that together for you to be able to do all those things that we talked about decision making and changing process and people engagement. So. Do you want to dig into that, Vince, from your perspective of culture?
I do, because if you don't change those other things, then the culture doesn't change, and so the transformation ends up being a failure, because you're trying to transform how you do business using the old way that you did it, the old way that you made decisions, the old way that you operated your processes, the old way that you engaged customers and staff. And so you need to change, because otherwise, if you're not changing culture, and that's really the key piece of transformation, is you need to have cultural evolution. Otherwise, it doesn't take effect. You can improve processes, you can implement new technologies and new systems, but if the culture doesn't change as a result of your transformation, because of all those other things that we talked about, people and customers and processes, then it's not actually a transformation. You've just done an upgrade. You've maybe improved the way that you do business. You haven't actually transformed.
And I think it also really highlights how severely your culture and your business processes aren't where they should be. It just highlights it. It just highlights how inefficient you are. So if you get a new piece of technology and you just put it in without doing all the work that we just talked about, and then having culture wrapped around it, it's like if you have a Chevette and you're a terrible driver. Well, the fact that the Chevette goes really slow and it's not really good handling, it masks that you can only do so much with it. So it really masks how bad of a driver you are. But then you get a Ferrari and you can go really fast. If you're a really crappy driver, what happens when you can go really fast in that Ferrari? It's really going to highlight how bad of a driver you are.
That is a tremendous analogy.
Thank you, Vince.
Like,
we may have to use that.
I would absolutely use that, because that is so, like, visually, I get, like, that makes so much sense. When you can't go fast, some of your flaws are hidden, and you can hide behind, the system doesn't let us do that, or the people don't want to make decisions, our customers don't know what they want. But as soon as you have that upgraded capability, it really does expose how poor you are performing. And that is I'm blown away by that analogy. So I thought maybe we can run through a couple of scenarios, because let's say we are now in charge of the business not as usual enterprises, and we are upgrading we're going through a transformation, and Mike and I are the co-CEOs, and let's play devil's advocate for a second. We believe that we're going to buy this new software product, this platform, and it's going to change the way that we do business. Now we're the capo di tutti capi. We're in charge.
Yes.
Well, I don't need to worry about the details. But now let's dive down, and let's say, okay, now we're at the the level where you're sort of straddling the point between being a thinker and a leader and being a doer, because you are going to have to deal with some of that dirt, some of the on the ground stuff.
Yeah.
We're now implementing a new software system. What does that mean for, and let's start just with one that I know you're excited about. Let's start with customers. What does that mean for our customers?
If we're going to implement a new system,
I
think if we rewind
yes.
and we go back to before even we have this concept of starting this massive transformation, and if you take stock of where your company is at, and being that terrible driver, I think there's things that you need to do to be able to get to the transformation, right? There's skills that you gotta. So you're still in the Chevette, but you may need to get a little bit better at driving and handling the car. So if we were to go all the way back and say we want to transform, you would need to go out and do, as we've talked about, a bunch of customer research from your measurement program, whatever that may be, CSAT, NPS, transactional surveys, ethnography, your quality work, and whatever else that you may have. You need to gather that. What are those observations? What are those insights? What are those customer problems that we need to solve, or that they're looking for a new vertical? Before we even start talking about, the new piece of software. And then how do you tackle those problems? Is it the same way? Or do you start a few years before your major transformation to talk about how do we do small improvements where we work on driving decisions, we work on process, we work on the culture. Like, there's digital labs and digital factories, things like that. Those things have to happen to create that skill to make you a better driver before you then get into the major transformation and then the major pieces of technology that may be coming with that complete business change. So I think that's what you need to think about. That's what we would need to think about as co-CEOs. It's it's a prep before you get to this major overhaul.
Right. So do I have the right pieces in place? Do I have
Correct.
the right skills in place? Do I have the right people?
Do you have the right framework?
Do I have the right framework and approach? Do I have the right governance? Do I have the right mindset? And do I have the, sorry, Mike, do I have a need? Like if I go out and I'm doing this ethnographic research and I'm talking to customers and they're saying everything's great, then what do I need to transform for?
Right. If you're truly customer centric, I mean, in this changing world, you would have to. But what is the problem you're trying to solve?
Exactly. And I think that starts with your customer. If they are not telling you, hey, you've got a major problem with this, then you may not need to undertake a transformation. You just probably need to improve some aspects of your business.
Correct.
Right.
And I also think that, well, we talked about the employee experience.
Yes.
Showing people, not just saying, here's a new way of doing it. And people throw DevOps and Agile. No one knows what that means. Those are concepts that may have inclination. Like no one knows what that means. So you have to show them practically. Here's this one little problem we're going to solve. We're going to use Agile, whatever cross-functional team. What does that mean?
Right.
How do you quickly solve for that problem end to end and then move on to the next thing? And then it's like building momentum. And then people, when you say words like that, they go, oh, that's what that means. Or yeah, that totally worked. Because if you get to this big transformation and then have never tried these small iterative approaches or a way of showing a proof of concept, no one's going to buy this new fancy way of working in like the biggest project you've ever had with all kinds of money. If you've never proven it'll work, no one's going to give you millions of dollars to transform in a completely new way that you've never proven out.
Well, yeah, and you know, it gets
Right?
and we talked about it in that episode. It gets people excited, right? So now, okay, let's go back to our scenario. We've traveled back in time.
Yeah.
We know that we know that we're going to get to a transformation, but our customers are telling us their pain points. Our staff are telling us their pain points. We look at our organization and we say, do I have the right people? For the purposes of this, let's say I do. I have the right people. I may not have them in the right place, and I may not have the right structure. So before I can even entertain a transformation, I need to involve HR. Or my human resource function. I need to write new job descriptions. I need to reorganize how the business flows and how work flows from one area to another. I need to do a lot of the infrastructure stuff, the base setting, before I can even get to time to transform.
Right.
And so I need to make sure, do I have what I need? And if I don't, how am I going to get it? So you come up with a plan for that. Am I going to recruit for it? Am I going to outsource it? Am I going to bring in consultants? Am I going to raise the number of resources in the organization and just hire through and just hope that I get some attrition elsewhere?
Right.
Or
do you say we're going to bring the superstars into there and then obviously where everyone's worried about budget and resources.
Sure.
And we're just going to absorb that because the new way of doing business will be much more efficient and much more customer centric.
Right.
And so we will live with the loss of those people.
Right. And
things that you need
important.
to think about. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's many ways to go. We're not going to tell you the answer, but
no.
These are things that are specific to your company that you need to think about.
And there's no right way and there's no wrong way, I guess is a better way of saying it. Like if you choose to undertake a transformation and you don't want to add additional resources, you don't want to add to your budget, it's going to take you longer. You'll still get there, but it's not going to, it's going to be a longer drawn out pain.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, as you were just saying, I'm going to live with being over budget for the next 3 years, let's say, knowing that at the end of that period, I'm going to, the ROI is going to pay itself back. Right. And payback period is a common measure of project viability and how you assess the and prioritize projects. If one is going to pay it back in a year versus another one that's going to pay itself off in 5 years, well, you do the one in the shorter term. Mm-hmm. Right. So I mean, that's a viable way of addressing that need. So what are you prepared to live with? And again, this comes back to that cultural aspect, right? Are we prepared to take that on? Mm-hmm. Or are we just going to draw out the pain and just deal with it for a longer period of time where it's like a dullness?
And I actually want to address something at this point. We're talking about like the nitty gritty, the hard stuff. But when you talk about culture, everyone always goes to the afternoon fun. Do we have a gym? Like, do we have a gym for them to go to so they can stay longer? Or is it Kegger Fridays? Those are things that we're not talking about. That is not what creates the culture for transformation. Those are things that you hear about and people think are cool. And I'm going to go work there because you have Kegger Friday. That is not going to help you. That makes you part of the 80% that fail. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the hard things that you need to do. And because those other things those actually, for a lot of the companies that I've talked to, those are the first to go. They thought that was what people wanted, but it was actually getting down to business and how do we create this framework to work, not the bowling alley or the great gym that we have. Like, I think after the first couple months, the gym is empty, and like that's not what people are looking for. People are looking for how does all the time they spend at work is meaningful, and how do they help move the transformation along? Because that's what is valuable to them,
right?
Not the granola,
right? I do a talk called "Ugly Babies and What to Do with Them" that really sort of dances around culture, and I've got this slide on what culture is, and culture, and I won't go into like the whole spiel. But culture is not those things that you just described. Culture is, who you promote and who you demote. It's the voices that you amplify. It's the voices that you suppress. It's how you hire and fire and reward people. And in a line, and I've got this line at the end of the slide, it's like culture is what your people say about work when they're not there. Like when they're at home or they're at a party and someone says to you, "Hey, where do you work?" What is their reaction? And how do they say, "Oh, I work at ABC, I work at Business Not as Usual Enterprises, and it is the greatest, and it's just a tremendous place to work"? Or do they say, "I work at Business Not as Usual Enterprises, but I don't want to talk about it"? Like, how do they respond when they talk about work when no one's around? Because it's easy to say, "Oh, everybody loves work" when they're there, because what are they supposed to say? They have to be the trooper and like, "Yeah, everything's great. I filled in an employee satisfaction survey," and like. That's what we mean when we talk about culture. It's the stuff that your staff say about work when no one else is around, when their boss isn't around, right? So yeah, that's the stuff we're talking about. So because we're good CEOs, and if anyone is looking for CEOs,
zero material.
Company, I mean, you don't have to look much further, but. So we know now we have the right team in place. We've restructured to empower them and give them. We've driven down decision making. We've empowered them to make those decisions, because I don't think we need to revisit that
No.
that topic. Now what? They go into some sort of planning, because by this point they figured out what the problem is, I would hope, or where the opportunity is. Would you agree?
We know the opportunity.
We know the opportunity. Okay.
Right. And they need, and at this point is, you're right. We need to go into planning, and it doesn't need to be like 4 years worth of planning, but there needs to be the scope and the direction of the problems we're going to solve.
Yes.
And I want to be clear about this. When they have that direction and the scope of the problems they need to solve, and then they're not going to know everything, because everybody loves to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so can you give me the detailed plan and the detailed solution? No. That is what they're doing. Them figuring out how to solve the problem is actually the project, right? They're not going to know when they come into a boardroom how they're going to actually solve the project. They have the problem. They have the scope of the problem. How they're gonna do it is the project.
It's the first.
Then that's it. Like, they need to focus and go to that without the distraction and the noise that follows a transformational program, because that just stops their progress.
Right.
And so that's where we talk about the structures of governance. But when they have that plan, it's go time. It's not contemplating and thinking about it some more. They need to go and start delivering to show those successes and to start solving those problems for customers.
Because it's not enough to hear from your customers, to know what the pain is, what the opportunity is, because then you've got to figure out what you're going to do about it. Right. This is where, like, the business analysis piece comes in, is figuring out, okay, we could, we have a problem to solve. We could do X, Y, or Z, but which one should we do?
Right.
Like, we can't do all three, but which one is what's the right way to solve the problem? And you may find out along the way that what you thought wasn't the best way, and that's fine, but you need to do that. So before you can even get to that planning period, you need to figure out what you're going to do, at least directionally, to solve the problem. Then you can start planning. Because I agree with you.
Right.
That is a project unto itself. The planning and the analysis.
Yes.
Right? Figuring out what we're going to do, and then figure out the sequence of how we're going to do it. But then you're right.
Emphasize action.
Go do it.
And eventually there comes a point of, is this the rightest of decisions? Like, when you have your team that have done their research, they have to pick a decision and go, because you can't keep thinking about these three things and which one's the best. You don't know which one's going to be the best. You've done your work, and it's time to go, and you course correct and don't look back. But part of the transformational issue is, when you don't have the structures in place and the culture, you get stuck at the analysis of, is that the right way to go? When you trust your team and you have that culture that drives down and emphasizes speed and collaboration and emphasizes action, you pick and you go and you start solving for that and course correct along the way.
Especially if people become romantic to a solution.
Right.
Like, because then they're going to be naysayers when it doesn't go well. See, I told you we should have gone my way. But they're also going to just be a drag on the team. They're going to bring everybody down, and you're going to lose morale, which is going to accelerate burnout. Because again, this is a marathon. And
loss of engagement when you constantly rethink of decisions that you've already made, or second guess.
Right. And
instead of picking, going, not people getting entrenched in one idea over the other, hence the collaboration, and then course correct.
Right. So if your culture is one that every voice is important, everybody gets to have a say, and we don't want to offend anybody. And I guess what I'm saying is, if your culture allows those people to be vocal, then it is the culture that is to blame. It's not
Correct.
the people. It's not the people. Again, it comes back to culture. If the culture tolerates it, it's acceptable.
Yes.
And if it's not acceptable,
It won't
then
be tolerated.
it won't be tolerated, right? And this is where you do see the creation of culture, of many subcultures within an organization. And everybody knows that, you've got your organizational culture, and then you might have a culture within your your team or your unit or your whatever you call it. But then you have like many subcultures that exist within that. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's like Inception. It's like cultures and cultures on cultures, right? And so as long as those cultures don't come into conflict. By the way, the drinking game for this week is culture.
Culture. So every time Vince says culture, we should have put that up front.
But that's where, yeah, we should have. That's where, if those come into conflict, it becomes, this is where, your CEO, your sponsor, your most senior person needs to address it, because the old way, the way we've always done it, will find a way to kill the new culture, because it's a threat. It's bringing change.
Yep. And culture
right?
starts at the top. So if you
Absolutely.
don't have that culture that promotes the things that we've talked about, it won't happen. It's not going to magically happen. And I know the grassroots, but to your point, Vince, the entrenched existing culture will always stomp out some emerging culture unless that culture is cultivated at the top of your organization. Your most senior leaders need to believe in the things that we're talking about: customer centricity, driving decisions down, emphasis on action, collaboration. If those things are not constantly promoted, and is set as the bar of the expectation, then the culture will not emerge. And without that emergence of that culture, you will not change your business.
Yeah. And I want to take what you just said a step further. It's not just promoted, but you need to see those in play in actual actions.
Yeah.
You like, it's great to say, hey everyone, we're going to be customer centric, but we don't have a team that talks to customers. We don't do anything with their survey feedback. And we hate when they call us on the phone. like you are not customer centric.
I almost spit out my water there.
I know that wasn't my aim, but I'm kind of glad that I almost did it. Right? Funny. You are not customer centric. If you want to say we value our employees, but don't be late or you're going to get in trouble, and I don't care if your kid is sick, you better be here on time. This is a one strike and you're out. Like, if your actions don't map to your words, then it's great that you say we're customer centric, or we value employees, or we're efficient and effective and our processes are amazing. Great, you can say it, but it doesn't make it true.
Right.
So, if your leadership is saying one thing but then behaving in another way, that is a problem.
Yeah.
And that becomes the culture, is one of deception.
Yep. I mean, if your actions don't map to your ambitions, the transformation is not going to happen. Right.
And you're going to waste and this is I think the thing that we really, really want to get across in this series and in this podcast is that, if you are not going to do the things that you need to do to be successful, don't start.
Yeah, like we're not promoting transformation. Like, this is not a podcast promoting transformation because we think it's like everyone's doing it and we're just jumping on the bandwagon. What we're saying is, if you're going to do it, here's the things that'll help you.
Right.
If you don't want to do them, that's cool. Just keep doing what you're doing and probably not listen to the podcast. But we're not promoting transformation. We're giving you advice on how to make your transformation be one of the 16% that's successful.
Yeah.
We don't care. It doesn't matter.
Should still listen. They should still listen to the podcast.
Listen to forget it. Listen to the podcast, yes.
Yeah, but what I mean is like don't invest in in a new platform. Don't invest in technology. Don't.
Yeah.
You can actually still transform without technology. You can still change the way you do business without some new system or some new software or some new platform. You can still do that and do it incrementally. And that way it just doesn't, nobody even really notices. But as long as you are acting that way and saying that you're going to do that, then that's cool. But if you're not going to invest in what is needed, then save your money.
And save a lot of
employee
burnout and
exactly.
And if you're a private company, conversation with your stakeholders of why this isn't going well. Mm-hmm. Those are all things that we're trying to save you from.
Right. The hardest thing. I have a friend that is a big BA, big business analyst in that BA community. And like the thing that makes them the most proud is the time they got a $5 million project to stop. Because it wasn't
going anywhere.
It wasn't going anywhere, and it was just like throwing good money after bad.
Right.
Like that is huge.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, right? That is immense.
Huge.
Huge. It's huge.
It's huge.
I'm gonna do my accordion thing. But like that, it still might be the right thing to do, right? And so if you aren't going to get the strategic value from a transformational program, and you're just doing it because you think you need to, or you think
you started
cool,
it,
or you started it,
and like just because you started it, if it's not yielding the value or what you thought it was going to yield, then
stop.
It needs to stop. That is the responsible thing to do.
Right. For you, for your employees, for your customers, for your shareholders, for your stakeholders, for everybody.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do now, at the same time, most businesses, I'm not going to say most, but there are a lot of businesses that can benefit from transforming. There's a lot. I mean, there's always opportunity to improve. That's the way I sort of approach my work. There's always something you can do better in an organization.
Correct.
Right. So, on the flip side, we're not telling you not to do it, but just if you are going to, make sure that you have thought through some of the stuff that we've talked about in this series, in this podcast, and that you're in it for the long haul, that you're in it and you're going to put the pieces in place that allow you to be successful, and not add resources because you don't want to, even though they're needed, that you want to rush through it because you just want to show something.
Right.
That you draw it out too long. Make sure that you're doing the right things, because as we always say, doing the right thing is always the right thing.
Absolutely.
So do the right things. I think that's a great place to leave this episode. What do you think, Mike?
I think so. I think if people take even like a small portion of it, I think their transformation and the work that they do will be better. So
yeah,
yes.
I agree. That's tremendous. Well, then this brings the Business Not As Usual podcast episode to a close.
And this arc to a close. Yes.
We've got something interesting in the next episode because someone made a boo-boo. That would be me. But check out the next episode. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, hey, sometimes people
Good.
make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to wait until next week to find out what we mean. Or if you're
Yeah.
listening to this after the fact, the episode's probably out already. But I'm interested to know what you, the listener, thought of this series, of the podcast, of just us in general. I mean, hit us up, michaelmartino.ca, vincentmirabelli.com, and we want to hear from you, and and how you're doing in your transformational efforts, and do you have the culture in place to transform successfully, or are you spinning your wheels?
Yeah.
But with that, we'll see you in the next episode of the Business Not As Usual podcast. Have a good one.
See ya.